An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 129. I'm Aaron Pellier.
I'm Darlene.
And we watched a different kind of film today.
It was our second one on the werewolf.
Well, it's more like the third werewolf of Universal Pictures that we've done, because we did Wolfman. We did Werewolf of London. Well, it's the fourth, actually, because then we also did Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Yes. And this is the last of the golden age of Universal Pictures monster movies, filmed in 1946, SheWolf of London. Now, before we get into this movie overall, I want to say this is a mystery. If you have not seen this movie and you want to have some sort of mystery and a little bit of tension, spoilers, go watch this movie now. We are going to recommend it, correct?
Yes.
So before you listen to us talking about it and you're interested in the mystery, go watch it.
Yes, because we're going to spoil it.
We're going to spoil it all.
The other name of it is The Curse of the Allenbys.
Yeah, and I actually do like that title. I'm not sure if it's as good as SheWolf of London, mainly because that both titles suggest something different. And since this is a mystery, how you are presenting the movie, even in its title, does tend to change your perception of it.
Well, SheWolf of London makes you think it's a creature film.
Especially since it's filmed by Universal Pictures, using many of the same sets and techniques that they did for the other Universal monster movies.
Yeah, you said that the house was Dracula's.
I think it's Dracula's castle. They just redressed it. I think like that staircase looks fairly familiar.
Did you tell him that it was 1946?
1946. So this is post-war. Like I said, it's the last of the golden age.
61 minutes.
Yeah, it's actually very, very short.
And you wanted to talk about the main actress.
Yeah, well, I do want to talk about the main actress because the main actress ties into many things that also tie into Earth vs. Soup. I can't say that we've watched a movie with her in it. Her name is June Lockhart. You may know her from many things. June Lockhart is actually the Mother Robinson from the original Lost in Space TV series. She was also Timmy's mother in Lassie. Like, she's a pretty big deal. There's a lot of interesting little tidbits about June Lockhart. Because she was involved in Lost in Space, she became involved with NASA in a very strange way. And she ended up being she was always there for the astronauts' wives and their families when the astronauts went into space. Like she tended to always be around people at NASA and supporting the space program. Another thing is that she actually ended up being on a quiz show back in the 1950s with a whole bunch of White House press correspondents. And they were all so impressed with her level of knowledge that there was and still is an open invitation for June to appear at the White House press briefings.
And remember, he said is
because she's still alive, at least as far as we can tell. She's 97, and she's still kind of a big deal in NASA. Like, she's still very well respected for the attention that she gave the space program back in the day, and her general education. Like, she's just very well read. Regardless, well, she wasn't the first mother on Lassie. She was like the second mother. She played the replacement because the actress left. I should say that. But so we have seen her in things, haven't we, Darlene? We have seen her in Lost. Well, I mean, I've watched every episode of Lost in Space and Lassie. Again, it's the whole growing up with reruns on television that I did. I watched most of these weird TV shows from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
My problem when I was growing up was I only had TV in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And Friday night.
I know. So you got Doctor Who, and that's why you recognize some of the actors we get on Hammer films or the weird British films that we get. But
the other thing I need to say is the double feature of this one is The Cat Creeps, which is another mystery.
It's another mystery. So again, spoilers, this is a strange film because in the end, spoilers, last warning, this doesn't have monsters in it.
No,
not at all.
Unless humans are a monster, which we can be, and in this case,
there is.
There is.
Okay, but here's the thing. This is totally not presented as a regular mystery horror film. This is presented as a creature feature.
And before we go into this, I will say, if you want to watch this to where it gives you the twist, stop right now.
No, we've already spoiled it, Darlene. I just spoiled it. I said last warning, and then I spoiled it.
Oh,
there is no monster in there.
Well, that
except
doesn't give you the
as
twist.
A human. There is no werewolf. This is not about a werewolf. This is about a family quotes trying to drive a woman insane by thinking she's a werewolf.
It starts with the Allenby curse.
Yeah, there's an
and
Allenby
I don't
curse.
know where the character Phyllis gets the Allenby curse. Maybe it was from her quote in air quotes aunt.
No, I think the Allenby curse was a thing that people truly believe that the family was cursed. Okay, so yeah, it starts with this legend of the Allenby curse. And it's I don't think I wrote it all down, did I? London at the turn of the century, there's a little piece of text. London at the turn of the century, the legend of the Allenby curse was almost forgotten until ... And what that curse is, we really don't know. It's, I guess, bad luck. That's what it comes across as a little more. But because of the way it's presented, we got confused. We were confused because I was like, all right, are we supposed to know, since this is a Universal horror movie, are we supposed to know who the Allenbys are?
And we looked it up.
We had to, we looked it up and we're like, okay, it's not the Talbots. The Talbots are a different thing. It's not X, Y, and Z. We stopped the movie and we're like, okay, because it seemed familiar, but it's not. Now, I don't ever remember seeing this film before. That's the thing. I don't remember ever seeing this movie. And I'm sure you didn't if I haven't.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously I was thinking maybe I've seen it and something is ringing a bell, but we had to look it up. And it turns out that it's totally unique to this film. But it made you really feel like, at least originally, that you should know what it is. I don't know if that's a negative to this movie. I think it might just be that it's a very good piece of world building that they put in this text and through dialogue later on that makes you feel like the world's a much larger place than what the movie is just presenting. So I don't know if it's a negative or actually a incredible positive.
And the place that you're taking this at is Allenby Manor in London. But since there's a lot of Scottish references, I think the Allenbys were from Scotland.
What Scottish references?
The lantern, the werewolf myths, they talk about it. So
but it's not in she talks about the werewolf myth in regards to some people believe from Scotland this, but she also mentions like Wales and France. So I think you're putting it in there as a...
It was a suggested kind of...
It might be because of the coats of arms that are on the stained glass windows. It might be, but it also might just be United Kingdom in general. But we start the movie going to Scotland Yard, and it turns out that there's one inspector talking to another, like a senior inspector. And again, I was like, we recognize this person, and I couldn't find where I had before. It's Inspector Pierce, and is it Detective
Latham?
So Latham is talking to Inspector Pierce. I thought I recognized Inspector Pierce. It turns out he's in a whole bunch of the old British 1940s Sherlock Holmes movies. But again, I don't know, because I don't know if I've seen those in a long, long time. It might be one of those back of the brain kind of things that I have seen them, because I have seen almost every piece of Sherlock Holmes media there is, including those old British ones. But it's not like he would have stood out from those as much as my mind immediately latched onto him, thinking I recognized him. And I have no idea why.
And Latham is the one that's projecting it as a female werewolf.
Yeah, Latham's like, there's a werewolf that attacked a man in the park.
He's the only one that is
and the inspector
pushing it as that.
The inspector and the detective go out to the park and to investigate. And this is where we're introduced to our two main characters. Would you say main characters? No, I wouldn't. I would say one of our main characters and her fiance. This is a strange piece of, I don't know if I want to say gender politics. But he was
the leading actor. If you went leading,
was the leading actor. Because I would say, and maybe we should get into this right now. Again, this is a very female-centric movie. The male characters are side characters. There is a leading man, but he's not in it a ton. In fact, most of the secondary women are in it more.
Most of it's taking place on Allenby
Manor
with
Martha Winthrop and her daughter Carol,
and the housekeeper Hannah and Phyllis Allenby.
Okay, now Phyllis Allenby is June Lockhart. So she is the main character, and if you want to make an argument who should have top billing on this, it is easily June Lockhart. June Lockhart is the actress in this movie.
Now, we had the poster puts her on the top, right?
Yes. The poster,
but it's the movie that puts her on second.
Yeah, the movie credits itself puts Don Porter as Barry Landfield, who is, we are introduced to Barry in this scene. Yeah, Barry is and her. They are going to be married. Okay. But I wanted to talk about like how much this movie is about women. And it feels different than many of the other Universal monster movies in that regard, because while there are women in the Universal monster movies, they are not the leads. They are not the protagonists. They are generally not the antagonists. There are some, like Bride of Dracula.
Some of them are just curtains.
So, yeah, some are just like, scenery, right? But in this, the female characters are front, center, and the most important to the plot. And I thought it was interesting enough to point out and go, wait a second, guys. You will look and see Don Porter as Barry Landfield as the lead on most of this. And I would say that realistically, he should be third or fourth billed. And he's the most important male character in this.
What would be the next character after
Martha Winthrop. Martha Winthrop and then Carol. Easily. 1, 2, 3. Easily. Those are the people that have all the screen time in the lines. So it is a very different kind of movie, especially for 1946.
Because he's on about as much as Hannah is.
Yes, I would say that would be good...
And she's a secondary character.
Yes. So the fiancé, Barry Landfield, I wouldn't say a secondary character, because he is kind of...
He's the leading male actor.
But he is important to a couple pieces of the plot.
So is Hannah.
Yeah, so is Hannah. So, I mean, you can't say that he's unimportant. He is. There are male characters that are important in
Now,
this.
the unimportant ones are the inspectors. Even that Dwight guy.
Yeah, I guess they are. They are. There's only one real important male character. But again, this is not us complaining. This is us going, wow. This is different. I think it's interesting. I don't think it benefits or suffers from who they have placed with the lines or what, if it's female centric. I think it makes complete sense for the story, and I'm glad they didn't shy away from forcing, like shoehorning a man into a role that he probably wasn't needed for, if you know what I mean. Like, it makes this movie a very different seeming movie. Anyway, let's get back to the plot. Like I said, we're introduced to Barry and Phyllis. They're on horseback. They are riding through the park, and they see the inspector come by, and they're like, "Huh, okay, well that's weird. Yeah, I guess there was a murder last night in this park, and it was a pretty horrific one because the person got torn apart." And Phyllis immediately looks a little cagey about it. But at first, it seems like maybe it's just because she's uncomfortable around the idea of death. And okay, fair enough. That's how Barry takes it. And they joke around about, they do a big exposition dump about their relationship, but it comes across very naturally because they frame it in such a way as to not explain it to the screen that they're about to be married and that they have a...
No, they have this, they're on a horseback.
Yeah.
And they're going to do a race.
Mm-hmm. To determine whether they're going to get married.
She's saying we're going to get married in
December.
And he's like in 2 weeks.
No, next week. We'll get married next week. And it's really joking, but it's a good exposition dump because it actually explains a lot about their relationship, as well as that they're going to be married, that there hasn't been really serious plans except for knowing that we're going to get married, and that Barry's father is going to proceed over it as like a barrister or something like that, because Barry's father is a barrister and so is Barry. And they're actually fairly well-to-do barristers, that they're well regarded as well. It's not just that they have money, that people actually respect them for being...
Yeah, you get that later on when he was walking through the park.
Yeah, the inspect, like even like the regular police officers know these guys as being upfront and honest barristers. So, okay, we get a huge amount of information, and I pause the movie. I go, Darlene, do you recognize how much information they just dumped on us through exposition, and it didn't feel forced?
I said that in another part too.
It was actually,
there was that whole discussion between.
If you watch this, you will tell that it is. You can tell it's exposition.
Very good writing.
It's good writing.
That's what we're going to say. It's very good writing. It's exposition, but it's not.
It's not forced down your throat.
Down your throat.
It's still exposition.
It's not a narrator doing it. Number one, that we get the problem of. Number two, it's not in your face.
Yeah, and it's delivered in such a way as to be flirty, positive. It makes you feel good.
Well, the other one that I was going to say is the whole Aunt Martha with her daughter Carol.
Oh yeah, exposition dump number 2, but it actually makes sense.
And she's It shows that Martha is an absolute
control freak.
Yeah. She's a snob, which in this thing you find out she's a snot, an artificial snot too.
Okay, well, in the next scene, Carol, who thinks she's the cousin of Phyllis, wants to have a note delivered to her. Do you want to say boyfriend? Would that be the best description in 21st century parlance? Because they're not really going to be married. They're not married, but they are clearly...
Her beau.
Her beau?
Beau.
I think they're sleeping together. Because she's sneaking out at night 3 times a week to stay the night with him. They're sleeping together, right? But Aunt Martha intercepts the letter that's being sent out.
Because she's giving it to Hannah, who's going to mark it to get the mail.
And Hannah clearly is in the know.
Something you would have in 1900s.
Yeah. and clearly Hannah is in the know about her sneaking out to see, God, what is his name? And I'm going to have to look it up here. His name is Dwight.
Dwight.
And he's an artist. And Dwight Severn, played by Martin Koslick. Anyway.
And we don't even get to see him until almost the movie's done.
Yeah, which is weird because he influences the movie. Again, it's this character that is a male character, yes, and he's in it. And he influences the plot, but he doesn't really need to be there for much more than a couple minutes, which is interesting. Anyway, Martha brings Carol in and explains, look, I've had it with you being with a man that's below your station. And this is where we got into another discussion later on, but let me finish the scene. Martha explains to Carol that Phyllis is not her cousin, that in fact we are not related at all.
She was a housekeeper there.
Yeah, Martha was a housekeeper to the Allenbys, and the Allenby parents, the parents of Phyllis, died. And is it vague? Because I don't really remember her saying how they died.
We don't say how they died.
But Martha took over as like a guardian of Phyllis and of the property. And she says that, look, we may have started as servants, but we have effectively moved up in the world, and I'm tired of you dealing with people below you. There's a lot of classism in this movie, but it makes sense. Again, 1900.
And it's all due to Martha.
Yeah, it's all due to Martha because honestly, the girls...
Nobody else has any care of...
No one else does. No one else cares.
Of the class structure.
I think it's because, again, Martha's the control freak that wants to have control over her daughter to cement up her social position. Does that make sense? But again, we get this big exposition dump, and it feels natural because it's Martha finally getting fed up with Carol going out and sleeping with a starving artist and saying, look, get over your crap. We have bigger problems to think about.
And you need to marry somebody better.
Yeah, you need to marry somebody above your station or at least of your station. And again, later on, we had a conversation like, wait a second. Their quote, Martha's idea of what their station is, if we're going with this whole classist concept of very early 20th century UK, late 19th century, is that they actually are fairly low class. They just are pretending to be middle, really, but they're servants.
Where the Allebys are not.
The Allebys seemingly are money, and it's implied that with Phyllis marrying
high middle class to lower upper
again
class.
It's Barry being the fiance. Barry's actually of high standing. He's obviously not not obviously, I should say it doesn't come across as he is a titled or landed person.
If you were in the 1880s, Phyllis would be considered a genteel.
Yeah, she would be one of the...
Not nobles, but genteel.
She'd be in the court. If this was like Regency romance, she'd be in the, what is it called? It starts with a D, damn it. The Diet?
No.
Diet? Not Diet. She'd be in the social circle where the nobles and titled people...
But she wouldn't be introduced to the queen.
No, she wouldn't be introduced to the queen, but she'd be in that social circle, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I know we're getting off.
So not in the nobles, but in she'd be considered a genteel, which would have been high.
Titled people would be looking down on her as a pretender, but she would be looked highly upon by everybody else.
By the middle class.
By everyone else. Like they would curtsy to her and things like that.
Where Martha and Carol at this time are lower middle class.
Yeah, the only reason they have any standing at all is because I guess in the will from the Allenby parents that they did ask for Martha to have guardianship over... Or
chaperone.
Oh, yeah, to chaperone Phyllis. I know we're getting so far away from the plot.
I really think there's probably a financier that is taking care of the money.
Oh,
because I don't think she has the money.
Yeah, no, she doesn't have the money. Do you know what I want to? Do you know what I think? I think it's Barry Lanfield's father who is the executor of the money of the estate, and that's how they met. That's headcanon. That's not explained, but it makes sense. That, hey, look, yes, he's a barrister, but maybe the Allenbys actually had dealings with his father for a long time, and that's how they originally met as like kids. Because it doesn't come across as Phyllis and Barry having a short, very formal relationship. It feels like they've actually known each other for quite some time. In fact, I would go so far as there's later scenes.
Well, you have scenes between Carol and Barry.
That's what I was going to say.
And
later scenes, there's Carol and Barry going out just to talk. And it means that it comes across as Barry actually has a long-standing relationship with this family. So he's probably been around here since they were kids anyway. Anyway, I know we got away from the plot, but here's the thing. What this movie does very well is give you exposition that explains a ton of information, a ton of backstory
but doesn't throw it at you.
It doesn't like shove it down your throat. It presents it in a way that makes you think and gives you ideas.
So this is one of those, this works. And this is something that movie producers, writers need to look at today and say, wow, this is how you do it.
Yeah. And I will also go so far as to say that I had a discussion yesterday with some people online that I do online role-playing games with, in that if you have a good story, if you have interesting characters, it doesn't matter what your genre is, it will draw people in. And I talked about this movie. I said, look, yeah, this is presented as a horror movie, as like a monster movie, but it's not. It's a mystery. And normally I'm not like the biggest fan of your average mystery movies. Like, I love a good mystery. I love a good mystery.
You love Sherlock
Holmes. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love, the Agatha Christie stuff.
But you don't like...
Most mystery thriller type stuff modern, it just isn't that great. It's not well written. I can usually figure it out really fast. So what I'm saying is good writing and good characters tend to make a movie worth watching regardless of genre or regardless of if you actually appreciate the genre. And another example of that is Bridgerton, Darlene. You know for a fact, because I know you love Regency romance, you love like Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen, that my general opinion of those pieces of genre fiction is poor. I do not like them. They're
pretentious.
They're pretentious. I think the language is overly flowery and things move at a snail's pace. Not that I don't appreciate a deliberate pacing, because that's fine.
That's one of the other things this thing did good, was the pacing. Pacing was really good.
But Bridgerton, as the example, you have engaging characters that aren't overly pretentious, flowery speech. There is some, and that's fine because it's a period piece. And you have an engaging story. And so all of a sudden, for whatever reason, even though I hate almost everything else in that genre, there are exceptions. I loved Bridgerton. I thought it was very well done. And this is an example I can give to everybody that's listening now, is that in general, do I like these kind of pompous stories about class struggle, like Downton Abbey? In general, I'm not a giant fan of Downton Abbey. I know that'll probably get some people like yelling at me over their computers.
But you love the Grand.
But I love the Grand, and there's a difference between those. Like, again, it's story and characters that are incredibly engaging, good pacing, not trying to be overly pretentious with their own genre center, so to speak. This is a good example of not being overly pretentious, I know we keep getting away from the plot because we're just praising this movie. And it's because this movie goes outside its own box. That's why it seemingly is so good.
It wasn't ever in its box.
Yeah, it never was in its box. God, let's get back to the
name
plot.
of the book thing leads you to assume it's a monster thing.
But it's not.
And either one of the the names do not.
The curse of the Allenbys. There really is no curse.
There is no curse.
There's no She-Wolf of London.
There's no She-Wolf. There's only a
sort of. We'll get to it. Let's get back to the plot. So we learned that Phyllis is basically adopted by Martha. That she's the guardian. Phyllis is the inheritor of the Allenby estate and all of its land, which is basically this manor home plus maybe some associated lands outside of London, etc. Outside, there's a dog barking at Phyllis, and she's terrified.
That's where we find Martha has brought in 2 dogs.
Yes,
and Phyllis hates dogs.
Phyllis hates dogs. The dogs hate her.
Yes.
They constantly bark to the extent that Phyllis is upset at night and has trouble sleeping because these dogs just continually bark at night. Now, here's some of the clues. This movie does really good at dropping clues that you don't even realize are clues up until the end of the movie.
Well, she's got the problem of now she knows about the murders that are happening in the park that's next door. Then you have she's not sleeping well because of the dogs either.
She's not sleeping well because of the dogs.
And then there's the lantern thing.
There's the lantern. She puts out a lantern because there's like this legend that a light at night keeps away. A light outside a window at night keeps away like evil spirits or something like that. Oh, okay.
And that's the Scottish thing.
That's fine. That night, Phyllis is disturbed by all these killings in the park. We have that conversation. Martha goes downstairs and sees Carol sneaking out to meet her boyfriend. And Martha lays into her again. Just says, the hell with you, go back to your room. You are not going to marry him. I'm sick and tired of having to deal with this. If I catch you, she makes vague threats. But Martha ends up bringing up warm milk for Phyllis to go to sleep because Phyllis is terrified of these killings and the dogs won't stop barking. Okay, Phyllis goes to sleep. In the park, 2 policemen hear a scream and a figure enters the Allenby home later on. Okay.
We also hear the guy says, and I had to ask you what it was. And you said child.
Child. Because you thought he said Charlie, but it was with an accent. It's like child. But here's the other kicker. When this figure walks back into the Allenby home, obviously a murder has happened because there's like this scream.
But there's the dogs jump in.
The dogs jump over the stone wall and follow the figure in. It's clearly a woman. Okay, but again, we've already been introduced to 4
scarf
women.
Over top, so you don't see the face.
Don't see the face. So we're like, okay, and here's some of the subtle clues. Supposedly Phyllis has been asleep. Now, if she's a werewolf and sneaking out, sure, maybe like she just wakes up and doesn't really remember anything. But the fact that the dogs aren't barking at her and the dogs are following her around means the dogs actually trust this person. And there's only one person that we've seen that the dogs actually trust. Everyone else in the household is terrified of them. It's actually really obvious, but it's not like put into your face because it's not like they focus on the dogs jumping over the freaking stone wall.
No, it's in the background.
It's in the background, but it's there. It's there. Your brain notices it. Right, Darlene?
Yes.
It's the red letter media, like the Play-Doh brain. Your brain noticed it. Let's see here. Phyllis wakes up with blood on her hands, mud on her slippers, and her shift.
Her robe.
Her robe is wet along the bottom hem. And she's like, oh my God. It happened. I went out and killed somebody. So she says that she expected this to happen at some point. That's why she wanted to be like watched after, or she had put that lantern out the window. Martha tells Phyllis to come downstairs for breakfast. And that's where she learns that a small boy was torn apart in the park.
Mangled.
Torn apart. Like that the child was barely recognizable as a human being. Okay. Wow.
And she runs out, and it's her cousin that's reading the newspaper.
Yeah, so Carol's reading that. Barry comes by to see Phyllis, but Carol says she's taken ill.
Yes.
And Barry is too nice of a guy to like really press the subject.
He came to take her to the dressmaker.
Yeah,
which
for
is
the wedding dress.
Wedding dress.
Mm-hmm. So Barry comes by, like I said. Martha drugs up Phyllis again.
I was like, boy, this is a lot of opium.
Dude, this poor Carol, not Carol, poor Phyllis. She's must have gotten a huge amount of laudanum.
She's going to have withdrawals afterwards.
She's going to have the DTs. Yeah, it's not going to be funny. The amount of opium that she must have ingested. The character, obviously June Lockhart is not doing like opium in this, but the character that she's playing really had been drugged up almost the entire movie.
You have Aunt Martha. Aunt is in quotes. Aunt Martha every night comes up with either a glass of hot milk,
dosed
some tea,
up with hardcore
or that
laudanum.
one time it was coffee.
One time she just gave her straight up like whiskey openly with laudanum in it. Like, here, this will make you relax.
That was during the day.
Yeah, okay, that's nice. So she drugs up Phyllis, but Barry really doesn't take no for an answer and comes back to the house and sees Phyllis outside sunning herself.
Well, this was he went to talk to Hannah.
Yeah,
and Hannah was doing laundry.
Yeah, Phyllis is
and
over
he
there.
told him that Phyllis was in the garden, so he went around the corner, and that's when Phyllis runs away, and her Aunt Martha sends him away because he comes in.
Yeah, but he does talk with Phyllis for a little bit, and she's like, "I just don't want to talk to you right now, Barry. I'm having a very, I'm not feeling well."
As he goes out the door, he runs into Carol.
Yeah, and he says, "Carol,
and
hey,
he
wait
takes
a second."
Her to the park to question.
Talk. Yeah. He goes, "Hey, wait a second. I want to talk to you. There's something weird going on. Phyllis has never really acted like this before. It's weird that she's so badly affected by these murders, because it's clear it's related to these things.
It's the murders and the dogs.
And the dogs are just awful. So later that night, an inspector comes by.
Detective Latham?
Yeah, it's Detective Latham. Comes by to talk to anybody. He encounters Hannah at first.
Yes.
And Hannah's like, take the dogs away. I guarantee you they did not kill anyone, but the dogs bark all the time. And they're a menace to everyone inside the walls. And then Martha comes down and says, okay, Hannah, shut it. I'm going to talk to the inspector. And she's like, no, I keep the dogs locked up tight, which is not true.
No, because they can just jump over the...
They just jump over the stone wall.
The stone wall.
Are they are they German Shepherds?
They're German Shepherds, and there's something like, there's like a half building, like a shed-like thing.
I think there's like boxes that they kind of jump. It looks like a chicken coop or something that they're able to like use to leap over this wall.
Over the wall.
These dogs are pretty athletic dogs, to be fair, though. Like, that's a good wall to jump over, even the way they're doing it. But anyway, Martha says, no, the dogs are locked up tight. I check on them all the time. They're just noisy. I'm sorry that they're noisy. I'm sure they're just young. I'm sure they'll calm down. Inspector's like, fine, whatever.
But he's the one that actually starts talking about werewolf. Yeah. Right there, too.
Yeah. And at this point, I think that Martha gets it in her head that maybe that's something to play up.
No,
right?
I think she already had that.
Okay. So that night, police are patrolling in pairs, and we see a cloaked figure leaving the house. The dogs aren't. Well, the dogs are there, and we see them jump back over the fence after the person in this cloak. And they're not like chasing after the cloaked figure, like they're pissed off.
Is this the one where? Am I missing a scene?
Are you skipping forward 2 scenes like you normally do?
I'm wondering. Carol talks to Phyllis, and she gets the coffee.
No, that's still the next scene. Darlene, if you wonder, it's usually that you are actually jumping ahead of scene. So the dogs are chasing after this cloaked figure as they leave, but it's not with anger. It's not like they're angrily chasing after this person to attack them. It looks like they're just happy to get out. So they jump over the fence, the stone wall, and leave. And they're not barking. They're just happy. Okay, again.
And she goes to the gate.
Your brain notices it. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so a cloaked figure leaves. They jump over the wall. The inspector is attacked that night. The inspector Detective Latham, that we've met, is attacked. And he dies with police, like regular police officers that are patrolling the park. Like, he dies right in front of them. And we see the cloaked figure kind of leaving through the trees behind them.
I have that down here.
He, Detective Latham, I guess, had his throat slit. Because he's holding his throat, and the police officers are like, well, one of the other detectives...
No, it says something about strangling.
No, it wasn't strangling. His throat, because he falls over, and one of them says, we should go get a doctor, and the other one says, no,
he's a goner.
He's a goner, which means he bled out.
So this takes place after the coffee is given to her, because Phyllis was going to stay up that night.
Maybe.
To make sure because she wasn't doing
every night there's a murder, Phyllis is getting some sort of drink that is laced with drugs.
And then the next morning, she finds a garden tool, a dress, and dirty shoes, and the door was unlocked.
Okay. So Barry and Carol go out riding together. They see the murder site.
They see the police looking at the head.
Barry returns and takes Phyllis out because he's like, I'm not going to leave without taking you out.
Because Carol tells him to forcibly
get her
be
out
more forceful and override.
Yeah, a little bit of like reverse sexism in a weird way. He's like, Carol's like, you need to be a man and just you've overridden women before. Do it. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Okay. Because Barry was being super nice and understanding and respectful. And so he does come in and goes, Martha, I am not taking no for an answer. I'm taking Phyllis out.
I would have given him the same advice.
Yeah,
I would have just
Mom is being a bitch for some reason.
And you get at this point, Carol is getting suspicious of her mom.
Because her mom is being a bitch to her. About like her boyfriend, about what's his name,
of everything. She's being, you get you never see it because all the way through you see Martha as how she's acting, but this scene that she goes with Barry and gives her that order, you get the feeling that Martha is not acting, and she's over doing something with Phyllis. And Carol is worried, and that comes into play later on.
So Barry and Carol go riding. He comes back. He returns. He takes Phyllis out. Barry was really trying to figure out what's going on. Phyllis says that she has had dreams of taking part in pagan rites and hunting with wolves and things like that.
In different past.
Yeah, in a different past. And
she tells him about the curse.
Yes, and he's like, come on. You're a grown woman. You know that dreams are dreams. You haven't done these things. People are just filling your head with crap. You're terrified about these murders, and you're trying to put your own spin on them. He doesn't really think that Martha's doing anything.
No,
he doesn't think Carol's doing anything. He just thinks that Phyllis is overly sensitive to these murders.
The next scene you have is the bodies are issuing guns on the patrol.
The bobbies are given guns by Inspector Pierce. He's like, I am issuing you
to
firearms.
Patrol they're supposed to go in twos.
Pairs, yep. Go out in pairs. And you have orders to shoot anyone that runs away and to question / arrest anyone that you encounter. But if they run away, shoot them. That they actually are given orders for that. That's not that great. So Barry is like standing outside the Allenby house.
And
he sees a figure leave.
And there's a guy on the bench, and this is the first time you see Dwight.
Yeah, because Dwight is kind of hanging around. But at first, we end up seeing Barry talking to the police. Barry ends up encountering a police patrol.
Yeah, because he was following her, and she's going towards this Dwight character.
And this is where we learn that, like, not only is his family barristers, like his father is a barrister, but they're very well regarded, honest seeming, respected people by even the police. Like, the police don't think they're shysters that defend, like, the police
guy
are like, oh,
really
sir.
get nice about it and says, can I get, kind of like embarrassed that he's having to ask him for identification.
Yeah. Oh, your father is so-and-so. Oh, I know you.
But can I please get some identification?
Yeah. It's more, it comes across as more than just him being deferential to somebody that is obviously powerful. It comes across as these two cops respect him, not because of his position, but because of what he does. Because Barry isn't being pompous at all.
No.
He's being actually very respectful to the police, which is, I think, part of the reason why the police respect his family. That maybe that's what his father brought him up as, is like, hey, you show people respect, they give you respect in return. You never use your position or power to.
And Phyllis has that.
Phyllis has that too, because
she treats Hannah just as well as she treats Carol.
Yes. And here Phyllis knows that she's the inheritor of the estate, but she just thinks that Martha is her aunt and Carol is her cousin, but Phyllis is going to inherit this at some point. So I think it comes across as like Phyllis is not going to inherit the estate until she marries or something like that.
Or she already inherited it.
Regardless, she never ever uses her money or position seemingly to influence people. Anyway, the man on the bench is Dwight, and he is attacked. And Carol ends up showing up. See, now Barry's like, hold on, I followed you out of the house. There's like an attack that happened. Did you attack Dwight?
This also gives you the thing is that the direction that the police officers come from is one direction.
Yeah.
And the lady that was they were following goes the other direction.
Yes, and
Behind
Carol
the bushes,
comes from a completely
different direction.
So again, your brain notices it, that totally different direction. So you realize that Carol couldn't have been the person to attack Dwight. And
this is her boyfriend.
And it's her boyfriend. Why would Carol do that? And you're like, okay, well, that narrows it down.
And this is where you get I come out
I've come out three times a week to see Dwight. So Barry's asking a lot of questions. He thinks Carol is possibly the SheWolf. This is where we kind of figure out. And Carol's like, no, come on. I've just been coming out sleeping with Dwight.
Not that words.
Phyllis is reading a book in bed. We go back to the Allenby estate. Phyllis is in bed reading a book on lycanthropy. And she has a very subtle Kirk light across her eyes. And you're like, oh, okay. It's a well shot.
It wasn't a Kirk light.
It's very, very subtle. I think it looks like a Kirk light. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a light across somebody's eyes. If you watch the new Addams Family movies from the 90s, I should say new, right? Morticia Addams always has a Kirk light across her eyes.
It's a beam of light that goes right across
It's not supposed to be very, very bright. It's supposed to just be there to be subtle.
But the Addams Family is not subtle.
It's not subtle,
and sometimes the Kirk lights on Star Trek's the original series
sometimes isn't subtle, but
isn't subtle either.
You'll know what I'm talking about when you see like Kirk leaning forward in his chair and there's like a light across his eyes. That's why I call it a Kirk light. It's a Kirk light. She gets up and talks to Carol, explaining that she is a werewolf.
But she brought some kind of. I never understood what
the wrap?
The wrap was.
Oh, that's her bloody bedclothes.
Okay, that
and
makes
like muddy
sense.
Slippers and things, because she's trying to confess that she's the werewolf and does not want to kill anymore. So Carol says she's leaving to go talk to the police.
To her mother.
And her mother's like, oh shit.
Because Carol even says in that saying, because I think this is a hoax.
Yeah, this is a hoax. Somebody is doing this to her. Because there's no way Phyllis would ever kill anyone. And she's
looking at her mom. And you know that she's...
There's a thought there, but I don't think Carol really believes her mother could do it. I don't think that. Like, Carol does not come across as she actually...
Who else would? Because there is only those 4 people in the house.
I think Carol thinks that Martha's involved somehow, but not the one that's going out and tearing children apart.
No, I didn't.
Martha brings milk to Phyllis right after Carol leaves. And Phyllis immediately starts like fading out and hallucinating. Like, there is so much laudanum in this milk that she's starting to like see shit. And Martha admits to drugging Phyllis.
And Hannah had when she was taking up the milk, Hannah followed and was listening at the door.
Yes, so the maidservant's there listening at the door. And this is where Martha full-on villain monologues about how she's the one that's been killing all these kids and setting Phyllis up so Martha and Carol can live in this house scot-free for the rest of their lives.
And put her in an insane institute.
Yeah, or even living here under care.
And now you sent out Carol, and they're gonna put you in institute anyway now.
Yeah. So at this point, she says, "I'm just going to kill you, and I'm going to make it look like a suicide." And Martha brings out a knife. And I'm like, oh my God.
But then Hannah makes some kind of noise.
Hannah like pops the door open.
Oh, is it the door?
Yeah, it's the door. And Martha spins around and sees Hannah there and chases after. And the maid's like, I'm going to tell the police everything you just said. I saw and heard everything. And you have been manipulating, Miss Phyllis for your own ends. I'm going to the police right now. Because Carol needs to also...
And Hannah runs off down the stairs.
Martha chases after with
the knife in her hand.
And runs with scissors. And she falls down the stairs, stabbing herself in the chest accidentally.
As she trips.
Down the stairs. Because, they do have long skirts on. Running downstairs, I can see having that problem, right?
Where Hannah actually doesn't have a long... she has a servant size, which means that
it's like above the ankle.
It's above the ankle.
So the police arrive, but also Barry arrives.
Yeah.
To see like Martha dead on the ground and Hannah basically just babbling the entire story.
But there's also Dwight at this time too. And
the police are like, oh crap, now I get it. Martha's been doing this entire thing, and I guess justice is served because she screwed up and killed herself. Barry's there to comfort Phyllis. The end.
Phyllis is still...
She's in shock.
Drugged out of her mind.
In shock and drugged
and gonna
out of her
have
mind.
to go through...
DT. She's going to have the DTs bad. Okay.
She's going to have to go through...
So we have been talking about, like, this is almost an hour long so far, and this is not one of our classics.
And this is only 61 minutes long.
I know. Our review might actually be longer than the movie itself. This is not a classic. It should be.
But which classification should it be under?
I think it's a classic. I think it's a classic horror movie, because in the end, if you can't really frame it as a thriller, because it doesn't work firmly as a thriller, because it does come across as a creature feature.
It is a general film.
It's a good film though. Like yes, it's honestly
what
good.
I meant was it's in a general category because it has mystery, it has horror, it has thriller, it has drama.
We've already
romance.
We've already talked about how good the writing is. The writing's very good on this. Okay, the acting, very good. June Lockhart, 10 out of 10. Like how she acts with her eyes in this movie, amazing. The costuming, Darlene.
I would say the person that was playing Martha did a good job.
Oh, Martha, Sarah Hayden. What else was she in?
Because there's that whole scene that she's talking, and you've got only a side shot of her, and she's making sure her nose is just slightly above, and she's looking down at.
She was in 1934's Anna Green Gables as Mrs. Barry. She's been in a lot of things, but not a ton of stuff that we would immediately recognize.
And she makes sure she is on side profile to the camera.
Oh, she holds herself very well in this movie. All the acting is good. Even, I would say if the worst acting in it is likely
The detective?
The detective, like the detective Lathrop. Because he seems to kind of play it a little over the top, where everybody else is just sort of playing it like playing it straight.
But I think he was supposed to be an over the top character.
Sure.
As actually a person that was supposed to be a little bit over the top.
But overall,
and a conspiracy theorist.
Overall, though, the acting works.
Because
the costumes work. The sets work.
Whenever anyone else is dealing with him, they kind of listen half-heartedly to what he says.
Does anything not work in this movie?
What? I knew you were going to ask me that question, but I haven't come to anything.
Like, I don't think anything firmly does not work in this movie.
Because you even have the back where he's taking
the
back projection of taking her into the country, Phyllis into the country.
It's fine.
And it was
for 1946. I'd even go so far as to say it's good.
And I like how they put the plants around stuff.
That's how you do it. That's how you're supposed to.
No, I meant even on the set to make the little alleyways of parks and that.
If this was drawn out into a 90-minute film, I don't know if it would have worked as well. Being that this is a 61-minute film, it's very short. The mystery works for that time. This is a compact movie that is very well done. Very well done. They don't try to draw things out too far. They don't try to pad it out with meaningless garbage. This is a very tight script. Very well written. The
tight
dialogue,
tight
directing,
tight editing,
good acting. Like, this is, I can't say it's like a 10 out of 10, right? But this is an excellent film.
I'd say it's a 7.
Yeah, it's
7.5.
7.5, 8. Like, I'd even go so far as to say 8. This is honestly a very good film.
And this would be something that if you're interested in writing, then writing is excellent. If you're interested in directing and stuff, or even acting, this is something to actually take a look at with Citizen Kane and that things. And this is...
See, I think what's odd is I'm looking on Internet Movie Database about the rating. Like, the average rating that it has as of right now is 5.2 out of 10. And I think that's because everyone is disappointed that it isn't a monster movie.
That could be it, because I'm disappointed.
It's a fake out, but it's a fake out for a purpose. It's not like they're trying to literally undermine everything about it. It's that, look, the plot of the movie is that one of the characters thinks that she's a werewolf.
Even the SheWolf of London, the poster, it doesn't show a werewolf.
No, it shows like a woman in a cloak, like clawing out with that could be fingernails.
And we know that that the mutilations was done by a garden, probably a sharpened garden claw. The rake. The little hand rakes that you have.
So we do recommend it. We highly recommend it. This, even though there's no Wolfman in this is a very good horror film. It's a good mystery. I'd say I prefer this over, let's say, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman with, even though that had like Bela Lugosi in it and Lon Chaney Jr., this is still a better movie.
I will say one thing. It was for the person, this was an over elaborated way of getting your way.
I know, they could have just been like, I am your aunt. You can't toss us out.
That could be just, but
she Martha could have been, Phyllis would never have kicked her aunt and cousin out. You could have just continued to play that game if that's what you were worried about, right? Like,
but she thought, somewhere in Martha's head was that when she married, she was going to get kicked out.
Yeah, because then there would be family in there, like kids
And they were in that in the race. You have that she was going to go live with, because that was even mentioned,
to go live with Barry.
Live with Barry.
So think about that. Barry's house is better than that, or bigger than that. I mean, he is a barrister. He has income coming in, where I think like the Phyllis does not have income.
So
really
Martha's whole plan
didn't really matter.
Didn't really matter, because she would have kept her status and everything if she was just patient enough.
But I don't think it comes across that she wasn't patient, and that she was feeling pressure from Carol sleeping around with Dwight. Like, she didn't want her daughter to marry below, quote unquote, her station.
I could see afterwards Phyllis marrying her,
marrying Barry?
Marrying Barry, living with Barry.
Yeah.
And
Carol living in the house.
Marrying, with Hannah taking, Yeah,
absolutely. Like, Carol's going to live in that house. I guarantee you Carol's going to keep staying in that house afterwards. And I don't think Phyllis would sell the house to Carol and Dwight, but like as long-term caretakers, like, hey, I'm not going to charge you rent, but take care of the house. Like, it's a giant house. I doubt that they could actually afford it to take care of it. That's the problem. Like,
no, but
Phyllis
it would be the state.
Phyllis would have to give them money to do it, because it's such a big, beautiful house. All right, so we've babbled. We highly recommend this movie, She-Wolf of London from 1946. If you like science fiction, you're going to immediately recognize June Lockhart. She is a treasure in this movie. In fact, I would say that she really lifted this movie up. Since I do remember her from Lost in Space and Lassie and all that, I don't really remember her as a big-time dramatic actress. But here, she really is. She does have those chops.
Her eyes were always downcast.
Well, like she acted with her eyes very well.
Like she was really overly worried. And this was the contrast to Martha, which was always looking up
or away, just kind of going, ugh.
And her nose being in the
air. Yep. There's a lot of body language acting in this that's very well done. Yeah, we just continue to praise this movie. I'm sorry. We should stop. I hope you enjoyed listening, because now our review is longer than the movie. I appreciate you guys listening. Next episode's 130, and we were discussing about what to do for episode 130. And
still need to do. And I don't want to do another creature one, but you want to.
Yeah, I do, because
he wants to do Frankenstein.
I think we should finally watch Frankenstein. And because there's a lot of these Universal movies that are like Frankenstein with somebody. We've already done one, and we probably should have watched Frankenstein first. So I think we do need to do Frankenstein.
We didn't have Frankenstein at that time.
Yeah, we didn't have it in. So we really should do Frankenstein next. The first Frankenstein movie. So thank you for listening. I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
Keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.